Think about this for a moment. A friend of yours just got a brand new tattoo. Another colleague is proudly showing off fresh ink on their arm. When you scroll through social media, it feels like every other post features someone revealing a new design, a meaningful quote, or a detailed sleeve. And then there's you. No tattoos. Not even one. In a world where body art has become so common, being tattoo-free can sometimes make you feel like the unusual one. What used to be rare has now become normal. And choosing not to participate can feel like quietly standing apart from the crowd. Interestingly, people spend a lot of time talking about why individuals get tattoos. Tattoos are often connected to self-expression, identity, memories, or artistic appreciation. But very little attention is given to the people who decide not to get tattoos at all. Yet the psychology behind staying tattoo-free can be just as fascinating. In many ways, that choice reveals a lot about personality, values, and how someone sees themselves over time. Let's start with the idea of permanence, but not in the way you might expect. Every day, people make huge life commitments. They sign long-term mortgages, enter marriages, move across the world for jobs, or even decide to become parents. These are decisions that can shape decades of their lives. But oddly enough, many people hesitate far more over something much smaller, a simple design made of ink. Why does a small tattoo sometimes feel like a heavier decision than life-altering commitments? Part of the explanation lies in something psychologists call future self-continuity. This refers to how strongly a person feels connected to the version of themselves that will exist years or decades from now. Some people naturally feel that their future self will still be essentially the same person they are today. Others see their future self almost like a different individual altogether. For someone in the second group, getting a tattoo can feel like making a permanent decision for a future version of themselves they don't fully know yet. They might wonder, what if I change? What if my beliefs shift? What if this symbol no longer represents who I am? Research consistently shows that personality traits, values, and preferences can change quite a bit throughout life. Something that feels deeply meaningful at age 20 might feel distant or irrelevant by 40 or 50. People who choose to remain tattoo-free often think ahead about this possibility. They mentally simulate the future. They imagine how they might feel years from now. This doesn't necessarily mean they're indecisive. In many cases, it simply reflects long-term thinking. Another piece of the puzzle involves how people view identity itself. Some individuals see identity as something relatively stable. They believe that core parts of who they are will remain consistent throughout life. But others see identity as fluid, something that constantly evolves. To them, life is a process of exploration and growth. They see themselves as ongoing projects, always changing, always discovering new interests and perspectives. A tattoo, by its nature, makes a statement. It says, "This represents me." For someone who values flexibility, permanently attaching a symbol to their body can feel limiting. It can feel like committing to a specific version of themselves before they're sure that version will last. Psychologists sometimes connect this hesitation to something called identity foreclosure, the idea of locking in a definition of yourself before fully exploring who you are. By avoiding permanent markers, some people feel they're keeping their options open. Of course, this flexibility can be interpreted in two very different ways. On one hand, it may reflect healthy openness to change and personal growth. On the other hand, it could also reflect discomfort with commitment or uncertainty about identity. The difference usually comes down to motivation. Is the decision based on thoughtful reflection about personal values? Or is it driven by fear of making the wrong choice? Social dynamics also play an important role. Even though tattoos have become mainstream, people are still aware of how others might perceive them, especially in professional or cultural settings. Many individuals quietly ask themselves questions like, how will this affect how others see me? Could this influence my career opportunities? Will people judge me differently? People who avoid tattoos sometimes score higher in something psychologists call impression management. This simply means they tend to think more carefully about how they present themselves to others. A permanent tattoo can feel like giving up some control over that image. But that doesn't necessarily mean insecurity. Sometimes it's strategic. Certain industries and environments are still more conservative than others. Being aware of that context can be a practical decision rather than an anxious one. At the same time, there are situations where people might hold back from self-expression because they're worried about judgment. Again, the outward result may look identical, no tattoos, but the internal reasoning can be very different. There's also a deeper philosophical perspective that doesn't get talked about very often. For some individuals, remaining tattoo-free is a deliberate aesthetic choice. It's almost like minimalism applied to the body. They simply don't feel the need to add visible symbols to represent their experiences, beliefs, or memories. Instead, they value meaning that exists internally rather than externally. Psychologists sometimes describe this as an intrinsic identity orientation, the belief that who you are doesn't need outward markers to be real or meaningful. These individuals don't feel the need to visually display their passions or memories on their skin. They carry those things inside their minds. In a culture that often associates self-expression with visibility, choosing subtlety can actually become its own quiet form of individuality. But authenticity matters here. Choosing to remain unmarked because it aligns with your personal philosophy is very different from avoiding tattoos simply out of hesitation or fear. From the outside, both people look the same. But psychologically, the motivations behind their decisions are completely different. Another common assumption in modern culture is that tattoos automatically represent depth, meaning, or emotional richness. Body art is often connected with personal stories, resilience, creativity, or individuality. And sometimes it absolutely does reflect those things. But meaning doesn't require a physical medium. Some of the most thoughtful, introspective people you'll ever meet have no tattoos at all. Their connection to ideas, relationships, and memories is just as strong, sometimes even stronger. Research on memory suggests that people encode experiences in different ways. Some individuals prefer tangible reminders. Photos, objects, or tattoos can help them anchor certain memories in the physical world. Others internalize experiences vividly without needing those external symbols. Not having a tattoo doesn't make a memory weaker. You don't forget someone you love simply because their name isn't written on your skin. Emotional significance can exist entirely beneath the surface. In that sense, people without tattoos aren't necessarily less expressive. They may simply express themselves in quieter ways. Their choices might reflect long-term thinking, adaptability, philosophical beliefs, or sensitivity to social context. At the same time, human motivation is rarely pure. Most decisions come from a mixture of influences. Someone might value flexibility while also worrying about future regret. They might appreciate simplicity while still being slightly concerned about judgment. Human psychology is layered.